Purpose Highway is a space for discussions that drive connections toward people's highest purpose to build a better self and a better world. Join me for Season 1, where I start to uncover stories of entrepreneurs and thinkers that are making an impact. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everybody. It's Scott Mason here again, revving up for another race down the Purpose Highway, and sitting with me in the front seat is the one and only Frank Agin. Frank is the classic underachiever. He has both a law degree and an MBA. He is the president and founder of AmSpirit Business Connections, which we'll talk about in more detail during this conversation. He is the host of 2 podcasts, not just 1, 2. He's active in a national charity roundtable that I myself have referred some charitable partners to. And he is the author of several books, including the excellent book that I recently read, Foundational Networking. I really recommend that to everyone. Frank brings not only his full intellectual force and knowledge of how to connect with other people, but lots of good, fun stories, some of which we'll share today, maybe some of which I'll pull out that are a little bit exclusive to me. Who knows? But in any event, Frank, it is so good to have you here riding with me down the Purpose Highway. How are you?
You know, that's quite a buildup. I could feel the pressure, but I'm looking forward to this. I enjoy your posts. I interviewed you. I enjoyed talking with you. So I'm ready for this road trip.
All right. Let's then roll up our sleeves and dig right in.
Yeah.
Frank, you describe yourself as an avid collector of great people. What to you is a great person? And why should any of us want to be a part of your collection?
Well, I ask myself that question all the time. What is a great person? And I really think that a great person is someone who's certainly accomplished. And I don't mean you need to have a law degree or anything like that. People accomplish themselves in lots of ways. I have friends who, finished high school and declined from going on to college, but are very accomplished in what they do. I got a good friend, Gina Winterstein. She knows more about telecommunications than anybody I know, and she's just self-taught, and she's passionate about it. So I think, certainly having that. But the other thing is just a willingness to help other people. And I'm not saying necessarily being selfless about it, but finding a way to help other people somehow, some way. And I enjoy meeting people like that. I have a mantra. I'm sure it'll come up through here. I have lots of mantras. But one of my mantras is everybody that I know could benefit by meeting somebody else I know. Mm-hmm. And it's very true. Well, you posted a wonderful little video on LinkedIn, and I responded to it. In sharing it, I responded connecting you to somebody else. Nick Capozzi, who you guys, I think you should meet, and your lives would be enriched by that. You don't need me to be the middleman. Get me out of the way. So that's what I mean by great people, and they're out there.
When you say you like to collect these great folks, talk to us a little bit about what that means and what role that taking that attitude has had in who you've become.
Well, yeah, when I say collecting, I'm certainly not a serial killer. I'm not keeping body parts or anything like that.
Yeah, let's not take the interview into a whole different direction, please.
No, but I actively, and this takes time, keep a database. I use Outlook as my database, and people, might thumb their nose at it, and that's fine. But I keep notes in there. I keep notes of the types of people. Well, I've certainly referred you to people for your podcasts and other episodes or other sorts of things. And I keep notes on that, not to keep score, Scott. I'm not keeping score. I will never come back to you and say, hey, wait a minute here, this is out of balance. But I kind of want to know, because I don't want to send you off to the same person a second time, right? Yeah. And the other thing is it allows me then to touch base and say, and this happened the other day, I was talking with somebody I had connected to somebody else. Hey, by the way, did you happen to connect with this person? And I'll leave names out of it at this point, but she said, no, I hadn't. I'm like, okay, I need to circle back because these people need to know each other. They kind of work in the same space doing different things, and I think their connection with each other will be beneficial to both of them. But we're recording this. It's just after the holiday season, and people get stupid during the holiday season. I don't mean ignorant stupid, right? But we get caught up in all the distractions of the holidays, and I have to remember that if I connect two people on December 20th, that might get lost, right? That might get lost somehow or another, and so I need to circle back. So that's when I say collecting. I'm keeping track of all those notes, and our network is an asset. The people we know.
Talk to me about what you mean by that.
Well, our relationships really have value to us. I mean, there's human capital. My law degree as a human is human capital.
Yeah.
My ability to do a spreadsheet is human capital. It's my ability to bring value to myself and the world. There's physical capital. You own a house, you own a condo, you own a car. Right. Those are money investments.
Right.
But then we also have social capital. We have the people who are within our lives, and that creates an asset too. Just as my law degree enabled me, or your law degree enabled you to earn a living, me having people in my world enables me to bring value to others, bring value to myself.
It's interesting that you say that, though. As you know from our prior conversations, I worked for many years in large hierarchical organizations. And one of the things that you would hear a lot, particularly with folks that had been throughout the entirety of their career ensconced in those sorts of organizations, really what matters to them is the respect that they get from others, that their ability to do their job, to be the person that is the smartest person in the room or the most capable person in the room, or who has the biggest number of success points in their resume. They don't need these sorts of relationships. In fact, I once had a conversation with a boss where I told her, as a supporter of hers who wanted her to succeed, maybe this wasn't the smartest conversation for me to have with a boss, that I was concerned that the approach that she had with people in her professional circle was destroying relationships. She might need those one day. And she's like, I don't care whether people like me or not. I don't care whether I'm popular. I care about whether I'm the best. What would you say to someone like that? Do you think that they have a point?
Well, they have a point. You don't need a network until you need a network, right? You don't need an umbrella until you need an umbrella. But when you need a network, you need it. And in helping people with their professional relationships, aka networking, I do run into lots of people. People are referred to me who are in job transition. And they will tell me, Frank, I worked there for 20 years. I knew the person in the cubicle to the left and the cubicle to the right, and I got my job done. And here I am now out there, and I have no relationships. I've done none of that. I've just let it all go. And it's very, it's similar to the person who was married for all those years and now back on the dating scene. They're kind of lost. So, but what I would say to that person is we always need others in our lives. Things are going to change. We're still in the midst of COVID. I don't know I don't know how that all ends. It will. But we need other people, and I'm not just talking about friends on Facebook, other people. I'm talking about people in our lives that we can reach out to and just say, you know what, I'm troubled by this problem,
Right.
What, it can be as simple as what contact management software should I be using? Those are things we need help with. So there are people who just have different views of the world, and I'm a connector, and that's what I do, and I just connect people. So,
do you think that networking can help someone find their purpose in life?
Yeah, I think networking. Well, let me just preface the answer to anything with respect to networking is not something that is born out of the 80s, the 90s, or the new millennia. Networking is as old as old as time, as old as recorded time. In fact, there's a wonderful story that I read about Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead is famous anthropologist, and she was teaching a class, and one of the students raised their hand and asked her a question. And the question was, what was the earliest sign of human civilization? In other words, what was that sign that you knew there was something different about humans?
Right.
And she was thinking about it. She thought about it. Everybody was like, okay, clay pots, weapons, whatever. And her response was a healed femur. And she went on to explain that in the animal world, you don't see healed femurs. You see animals that have broken femurs and they've died. You don't see healed femurs. But when they came across humans that had a healed femur, and for those who don't know, the femur is the bone that connects the hip to the knee, very essential for a being that needs to be mobile. Not in this day and age. We can, Amazon or whatever will deliver meals to us. But in that day and age, you needed, and so that femur, when broken, without medical care, takes 6 weeks to heal. So someone had the compassion to stay with somebody else, fetch their water, get their, food, bathe them. Oh God, I don't even want to get into that, right? But the compassion to do that, and that's what we need. We all need that. We all need that to be successful.
It's interesting because you're using the word compassion, and I've got to say, especially before I was an entrepreneur, and when I was underutilizing networking as a skill, I associated networking as a term with a lot of words, not compassion. Some of the words I might have associated with were yuck, or people passing out business cards aggressively, or the sort of round robin commercials that you see at a lot of networking groups, which, look, I don't want to deny they have huge value, but that were very self-serving. I never thought about it as involving compassion of all things, because I always thought it was about ruthless social climbers just faking being nice so that they could get ahead. Talk to me a little bit more about compassion, and is that other stereotype about networking that I just talked to you about ever something that you encounter, and is that even real networking from your perspective?
Well, it's all networking. I think the problem is, Scott, is that a lot of people look at networking as sales, but again, back to my story about the broken femur, and that's what the amazing thing about that is that DNA we have, you have, I have, the compassion to care for somebody. And so, people get tripped up in networking because they think, okay, I've got to be selling, I've got to be out there getting my business card out, and all the yuck things that you talk about.
Right.
And yeah, that is yuck, but I look at networking much more broadly. It's not about making the next sale. It's about building a life that the sales come to you. Building a life that when you truly need help, the people come to you, to your aid. That's really how I view networking. So, I call it building relationships. But I think just a lot of people it gets a bad rap because that's, what people associate it with. They associate it with networking events,
Yeah. Which aren't always handled in the best way. I mean, some are and they can be amazing. Others are just highly transactional and frankly unpleasant to be at. But, part of, to me, in order to successfully network is to sort of sample a lot of groups and get a sense of what's right for you and what is your community, what's your tribe. And once you find that, to me at least, you sort of fit in like a little bug in a rug and you're having a good time. And it comes a little bit more naturally. Is that your sort of sense as well, or do you feel differently about that?
Well, I think we all have an apprehension about being with strangers. And again, I'm not an anthropologist. I have no degree in it, but I'm very fascinated by this. Yeah. But we grew up, when we say we grew up as a species, we formed into tribes of about 150, and there's science behind that, and I won't get into that. And you spent your entire life with that group, that tribe, that clan.
Yeah.
And if you saw somebody from outside of the clan, it generally wasn't good, right? They were coming to take your women or just, destroy the place.
Right,
so it wasn't
right.
good. And so we carry that apprehension forward. So we are uneasy with being with people in events. But I'm fond of saying that really what networking is about is part of what networking is about finding strangers and making them your friend. And that's what ultimately needs to happen. It's not always about just meeting new people. We know each other. And as time goes on, our relationship's going to get better and better. We're going to know each other better. And I'm going to be in a better position to be able to refer you and likewise and help you, find out ways to help you, and vice versa. So we might run into each other at an event and sit there and talk with each other, and that's not wasted time.
No, I agree.
That's us catching up. And so often people think that networking is I've got to be meeting new people. And the reality is if you're between the ages of 19 and 90, you know more people now than you're going to meet over the course of the next year. If you think about it. Right, you're still in high school. You're hanging around with the same 5 or 6 people, but then you go off to college, and it just kind of explodes.
Yes.
And you start meeting lots of people, and then when you get in the 90s, you tend to forget people. So you're meeting all the same people. It just feels new.
We'll have that conversation again when we're 89.
Right, but we know so many people. And cultivating that relationship is networking, and it's very, very important. It's something that we really need to devote time to. Hence, back to my whole, collecting and keeping information, because I want to know. I want to know these things. It's for me, it's important to try and find out people's birthdays.
Yeah.
I don't need to know year, just need to know day. And those are things should be important.
Well, I will tell everyone right now, my year of birth, 1998. Just so you know. Frank, let's go back to a little bit of an earlier part of the conversation. We were doing some word association with networking. I had the word yuck. You had the word compassion. It relates to another word association that I've seen you and heard you use in multiple occasions, and that's foundational. As you know well, because you wrote it, it's the title of that book we referenced earlier, Foundational Networking. Then when we did a little bit of our pre-interview work, you had the following statement when I asked you to talk about some things that were important to you. And this statement was in relation to humor. Humor, you said, is one of the foundational expressions of a bountiful and joy-filled life. What are the foundational principles to networking? Do they relate to and are they the same as those for a joy-filled life? And can humor help connect you to a better life?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that question there. Humor can. Humor is a universal language. There's nobody alive, there's nobody who's ever lived that has not enjoyed a good laugh. And we won't get into the science of it, but when we laugh, we actually, when we laugh, hormones come into our system. Laughing is akin to being afraid, right? It's kind of the same thing. And so we enjoy it. It makes us feel good to laugh. And so people want to laugh. Poor people want to laugh. Rich people want to laugh. People on the left, people on the right, everybody wants to laugh. Everybody wants to feel good. And so what humor does is appropriate humor, right? It allows us to feel good, and we associate that good feeling with the people who have made us laugh. I find that what humor does is certainly self-deprecating humor, right?
Yep.
I'm human, right? It lets me poke fun at myself and allow people. He's human. He's approachable. We do business with those. We associate with those we know, we like, we trust.
Yeah.
And humor does that. But, when you start talking about foundational things, a lot of times people look at networking, and I talk a lot about this in foundational networking. People look at networking as these skills, these tactics, these strategies. And it can be, all things being equal, somebody with a great 30-second commercial is going to do better than somebody who doesn't have a good 30-second commercial. But things aren't all equal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are people out there that are more compassionate, that are more trustworthy.
Yeah.
And in the book, I really kind of break it down into 3 sections. One is that you need to have a foundation of having a good presence. You need to have that confidence because people want to associate with confident people.
Yeah.
From time to time, I'll see somebody on LinkedIn or Facebook posting a video, sharing their sob story. And I'll reach out to them privately and say, I'm sorry that you're going through this, but don't share that.
Yeah.
Don't share. People don't want to, people might feel sorry for you for a little bit,
Yeah.
but they don't, they want to see courage.
Yeah.
And I know there are people who will disagree, but given a choice, I want to associate with somebody who's got confidence. Everybody's got problems, don't get me wrong. But I want to associate with somebody who's got confidence and who's optimistic, as opposed to somebody who's downtrodden. So that's the first thing. The second thing I talk about as being foundational, I call it altruism, but being willing to add value to the world. And a turnoff for me is somebody who is very self-centered, very calculating about what they get, and not really concerned about what other people get. And I want to connect with people. I want to be associated with people. Most people want to be associated with somebody who's going to be adding value to the world. I mean, who do you want to see win the lottery? The person who hoards all the money, or the person who's generous in their community? Right. I mean, if you couldn't win it, I would want to win it. But if I couldn't win it, I would want it to go to that generous person. Right. Because I just know that it's going to make its way out and be the tide that raises all ships. And then the third thing is being foundational. It's just our integrity, being reliable. I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And if I can't, I'm going to try and get with you as soon as possible and say, Scott, something came up. I just have to drop the ball on it, I don't mean to do it, but we need to have that reliability and be able to share credit when credit's due to other people, things like that. Those are the important things.
That's amazing to hear, and I appreciate you sharing those things. And those are principles, actually, that since reading your book, I've been mulling around and trying to be self-conscious about, which actually goes directly to my next point. Do you have any thoughts as to how any of us might develop the sort of self-awareness to be sure that we're not violating one of those foundational principles? For instance, that we're not coming across as that transactional, selfish person, which, by the way, is when you talk about networking events, I think that that's where people like me, before I was involved in the networking world, got that yuck sort of factor from. But it also could go as to some of the other things that you were talking about, adding value or making sure that you are, really someone who is, altruistic or generous spirited and reliable and has integrity.
Yeah. My answer to all of that is it all has its roots in science, but there's it's called the Hawthorne effect. And it was discovered in the 30s. They were doing research at a Western electric plant in Chicago, Illinois. It was the Hawthorne plant. And they were testing all sorts of things to make employees more productive, the lighting, this and that, the layout. Yeah. And what they found that made people the most productive was just being measured. That which gets measured gets acted upon, right? And so I'm a big fan of the Hawthorne effect, of measuring things. And you don't have to have a boss sitting there with a clipboard. You can be measuring things yourself. So, for example, I became very, very dialed into helping other people when I started journaling it. I started just I called it the giving journal. And I don't do it anymore because I find it's more of a headache. I just got to a point where it's a habit now. I don't need this journal. But I was, writing in the journal, the date, referred Scott Mason to this person for podcast, and I would look at that journal every day and it would scream to me, but there's been 3 days since I've done something for somebody. So journaling. And so you can certainly journal with respect to being altruistic. You can certainly journal with respect or keeping track of. You can journal with respect to establishing your integrity or credibility. And I guess it's all tied to the same thing. But you know what? I'm gonna go out of my way to give credit to somebody. I'm going to go out of my way to post on somebody's page. I really liked your video. That really was moving to me. I'm going to share this.
Yes.
You know how much time that takes? That takes like 15 seconds. It doesn't take any time, but it has a lasting value. So I'm a big advocate of, just go buy yourself a little 5x8 little notebook and just start keeping track of these things. Not to keep score. It's for you. But that's what really kind of got me going, was just like, okay, I need to focus on being better at it. In fact, I read a study of one woman. What she did was she really wanted to become better at giving compliments. And so she would start every day with 5 pennies in her right pocket. And then every time she gave a compliment, she got to move a penny to the left pocket, or vice versa. It doesn't matter, right? As long as you're consistent with it. But that allowed her to be top of mind with respect to giving compliments. I got too many pennies in my right pocket. I need to do something. That's a really neat tie you're wearing. Where'd you get that? Get to move a penny. It sounds all very calculating, but it's just a way of developing a habit.
Yeah. Yeah. And forcing that self-awareness upon yourself.
Yes.
Now, I want to get back to something that you said earlier, was one of your foundational principles of networking, and that is adding value. After working in government for nearly 20 years, when I found myself in a position where I was transitioning careers, I went and saw a career coach. And he told me, one of the most effective things that you can do to get yourself alternate employment or new employment is to set up informational interviews and then wow them so much that they want to refer you for other jobs, or that they want to find a way to hire you themselves. But he said, what you need to do in order to get their attention, because everyone is flooded with emails, is to somehow position yourself so that you are offering value. And that last word, Frank, it struck me right in the heart, because I honestly could not figure out what value I had to offer anyone. And I know that I'm not alone, particularly if you have been that person like you talked about earlier, who did their job every day, knew the person on the cubicle to their left and to their right, really didn't develop this network. Maybe they had a specialty, like maybe they were really good at a particular type of coding, or maybe they were, answering some sort of request from the public for their company, and they can't figure out what value they have. How can such a person add value if they don't know and can't figure out what value they have to add? What advice would you have given me if I had said, Frank, I don't have any value. How do I offer that?
My advice, or I would have pleasantly chided you or gently chided you and say, Scott, you do have, you talk about the big lie. That is a big lie. You have value. And I said it earlier, everybody we know could benefit by meeting somebody else we know. Now, the tricky part is walking in and, okay, I'm interviewing with, Bob Smith.
Right.
How do I add value to Bob Smith? That gets challenging because you don't know anything about Bob Smith. And I can see where that would be, that would be frustrating. That would be, I don't know. I don't know what I can do here. And to be quite honest, I don't know what you could do in that instance, because I don't know what the job is. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know any of those sorts of things. Advice I have given to people in those sorts of situations, during 2008, 2009, you were 10 or 11 years old, right?
Of course. Thank you for reminding everyone of that.
Yes. So you might not remember, but we had this huge financial meltdown, and there were thousands upon thousands of people without jobs. And so I had the opportunity to get out and talk to people about networking, and was challenged quite a bit about, I don't have anything to give. My savings are gone. I have nothing to give. And I said, have any of you ever been in a job where you just knew in the first 10 minutes it really wasn't for you? It was maybe beneath you, not something you were interested in. Of course, you get lots of hands. this is what I want you to do next time you're in that position. Is I want you to just talk to the interview and be real. Say, I just want to let you know that I don't think that this position is for me, for whatever reason. Explain
Right.
that. But I know lots of people. I would like to continue and hear what you have to say
Wow.
and learn more about it, because maybe I could help you fill the position.
Wow.
That person's going to remember you, right?
Yes.
So all of a sudden you're adding value. You can certainly add value. I've someone of my network friend, Matt Ward, wrote the book. It's called More Referrals, more word of mouth, marketing, blah blah blah. It's a long title. But one of the things he talks about in that book is that everybody needs to be an expert in their profession, right? So let's say career coach. Career coach he or she needs to work with clients and perform, but also needs to be on the cutting edge of what they do.
Right.
Well, one of the things you can do to those people, and we live in a beautiful time because we have this thing called the internet, Google.
Yeah.
Go out there and find something that they might not be aware of. Hey, I ran across this article, and share it with them.
Yeah.
And I ran across this article on career coaching. I didn't know if you had saw this.
Yeah.
Well, that's adding value because they didn't have to take the time to do that. Yeah. So I think there's lots of things that we can be doing for people. People post things on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. You know what they want? They want people to notice. Yeah. They want people to like it. They want people to comment. They want people to share.
That's true.
And those are simple things that we can do to add value to people. And I got to be honest, people who like, comment, and share on my stuff, I'm more likely to like, comment, and share on theirs. And it's not a quid pro quo thing, but it's all of a sudden they're on my radar. The one guy mentioned, Nick Capozzi. I see his stuff and I like, comment, and share it. But he's done it for me too, so but he puts out good material too. So I think, to get to your question, there are ways that we can add value to people. Here's the problem. The problem is that people are looking to hit the home run. Geez, where's this winning lottery ticket I can give Scott? Well, I don't have a winning lottery ticket. I don't have the next best client for Scott or whoever. But we get hung up on that. We're looking for these home runs, and if you look at Major League Baseball statistics, most of the runs are generated by base hits, walks, little silly things like that that we kind of overlook. And that's the same thing with networking. Is stop trying to find that home run and look for the little things we can do for people, because in the end, the little things are really are what's going to help them.
I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here. Ask you a question out of the blue.
Okay.
What is leadership to you? And is there a relationship between networking, leadership, and power?
Okay. What is leadership to me? Leadership is taking responsibility for caring for the people around you. Is really what it is.
I love it. Talk to me a little bit more about exactly what that means. I thought being a leader was just being a boss.
Yeah.
Caring about people, they're supposed to be doing what I tell them to do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, not too long ago, 120 years ago, they started pulling us off of farms into working in industrial America. Yeah. And things changed, and all of a sudden you're working for somebody and not really working for yourself. And that really was the boss. But we've really started to discover that people don't like that. People don't need that. People need to be fulfilled. And they need somebody to care for them and look out for their best interest. And so, leadership is a great book out there. Not my book. Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last, is an awesome book on leadership.
It is. Yes. Yep. Thank you for raising that.
Yep. And, but, he talks in there about, being willing to sacrifice in the short term for the people around you.
Yes.
That's what leadership is.
Yeah.
Now you ask, how is that related to networking? Networking is being willing to sacrifice in the short term for the people around you. You have a long-term interest, but in the short term, you're kind of giving to other people. So they are very, very closely aligned. You will see that the people out there who are successful leaders have great networks, and the people with great networks are successful leaders. They're intertwined with one another. The bossy boss, yeah, you know what? You might think they're successful. Probably not. Probably not. The great CEOs out there in this country have a wonderful following of people that may not be there. Good examples: Netflix. Netflix lets people go all the time, but the people who leave there leave generally with a great feeling about Netflix, because the guy tells them right from the start, listen, this is not a lifetime. This is just I think what the way they term it is that we are a team. We are a professional sports team. So we'll use you as long as we need you, but otherwise, we'll ask you to move on, and move on and be a great alumni of Netflix, but we're going to give you tools to find that next position. So that's how I see leadership, is really caring for other people, sometimes to your detriment.
Yeah. One of the things I will go back to that you talked about, because I feel like we don't talk about it enough in our culture, and I would be curious to know as to whether you agree with that statement that I just made, is sacrifice. Do you feel that we as a culture are open to personal or professional or other sorts of sacrifice to a sufficient degree? Do you feel that sacrifice is really necessary for us to live the life that we want to live? Or do you think I'm just, being some virtue signaling jerk up here?
Well, I guess to answer your question, I'm an optimist. I believe in humanity. Back to the story about Margaret Mead. Yes. Somebody made a sacrifice. And I got to tell you, Scott, that was huge, right? That was huge, because it was kind of a nomadic society. We need to keep moving to survive, but we're going to stay put. That was very selfless. That was a sacrifice. And again, that DNA is coursing through your veins. It's coursing through my veins. So we are hardwired to sacrifice. We sacrifice every day. You're married. I'm married. There are sacrifices, right?
Oh, yes.
Don't get us started, right? Yeah. Look at my wife in here.
Exactly. I was going to say my husband will happily talk to her about sacrifice.
Right. Sure. But we all sacrifice, and we sacrifice at work as well. I know I can count on my assistant. If we're under the gun, we need to get this done. Yeah, okay, yeah. I'll be there on Saturday. So I think we do sacrifice. I think the people who are hardcore about not sacrificing, I don't see anything in it for me. That works in the short term. It doesn't work in the long term. Whereas with leadership, when you're sacrificing in the short term, I am going to do this for the people around me.
Yeah.
They have your back, and in the long term, that'll benefit you. But if you're that bossy boss, yeah, I'm gonna take your crap, for lack of a better term, until I don't need to take your crap.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas, with my assistant, I will have a good relationship with my assistant long after she's gone from here.
Yeah.
I know this because I have a good relationship with all the other assistants I've had over time. We have great relationships. And, so I think it's, I think we're hardwired to sacrifice, and society is built to favor the person who is willing to have that short-term sacrifice.
Well, on the subject of sacrifice, I could talk to you all day. This podcast could easily be 3 or 4 hours long, and we'd still be going, and I bet it'd be really interesting. But unfortunately, I am going to have to sacrifice that conversation and switch the subject a little bit to letting folks know a little bit more about how they can find out about you, how they can read your books, and tell them a little bit more about AmSpirit.
Okay, the best way I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect with people. I'm happy to get acquainted with people, find out where I can add value to them. Frank Agin, Agin. I think I'm the only one on LinkedIn. But I have a website, frankagin.com, that has links to all of my books. It has links to my podcasts. It has links to my email. It's kind of the central hub to learn things about me. It has links to my organization, AmSpirit Business Connections, and we are an organization that brings together entrepreneurs, sales reps, and professionals into a weekly meeting where they learn about each other and they exchange referrals. A networking group. Yuck.
Right.
And I do get that. Attorneys get a bad rap. Attorneys aren't bad people. You need an attorney. Believe me, you hire an attorney. Most attorneys are great. They're not yuck. Same thing with networking organizations. But yeah, that's, my books, they're, are on there. Podcasts. I have a couple of podcasts, Networking RX, where I have conversations with people like you, and we talk about networking. I have conversations with social scientists who are doing research on professional relationships or relationships in general. I will find articles in Psychology Today talking about, about networking and really I really love to get into the science behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have another podcast, which is a daily, well, I shouldn't say daily because I don't know how long I'm going to continue daily. It's been daily for 2 years, but it's quite frequently a 1-minute podcast, just a 1-minute little insight, something I've read, and I relate it back to the listener.
It's really wonderful. Thank you so much. Frank, it has been absolutely terrific having you here today. Thank you so much for coming. And for everyone tuning in, make sure you look up Frank, and I will see you next time for another trip down the Purpose Highway. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Join our community today at purposehighway.com and subscribe to get notified when new episodes go live. Scott Mason, checking out.